Tonight on 2020.
Should an autobiography located in the fiction section of bookstores be allowed to call itself an autobiography? The autobiography of Maxine Kingston's The Woman Warrior, Memoirs of a Girlhood Among Ghosts, has been causing some controversy. The author calls it her autobiography, yet many times she is focusing on her mother's life, not hers. Where are the lines of autobiography and biography? What about the lines of truth and imagination? Ghosts are a part of fiction, fantastical myths about Fa Mulan, and many more elaborations and guessing leaves us wondering, is this real life? We want to find out how true this autobiography is and why it's written the way it is. On 2020 Tonight, we will be talking with Maxine Kingston herself for a closer look at the book that so many are enthralled with. Welcome, Maxine. Thank you so much for being here tonight.
No, thank you, Barbara. And I find it really important to talk about issues that arise around my writing.
Maxine, I want to address and talk about your autobiography, The Woman Warrior, Memoirs of a Childhood Among Ghosts. The book has been very successful. It has even won awards, correct?
Yeah, actually I won the National Book Critic Award the year I published it.
Wow, congratulations. That is quite an accomplishment.
Thank you.
How do you feel that your book, after winning a nonfiction award, is classified as fiction in so many bookstores?
Well, honestly, I can't fight them on it. I have said in the book that there are many gaps in my mother's stories, and I had to work to fill in the holes. To be a writer, you need imagination, and I filled in where I needed to complete my story.
So you're saying that your book is actually fiction?
No, Barbara, I'm not saying my book is actually fiction. In my culture, we use talk story. We communicate our histories down through word of mouth, and over the years, stories may change or parts may be forgotten. So it's the storyteller's responsibility to fill in what you need to be able to pass on the story, to keep the tradition alive, you know? Mm-hmm. I simply did what my mother did, but I put the stories down onto paper. Maybe I had to figure out my own parts of the story, but in my culture, that's not lying, that's just keeping history alive. I merely continued what my mother did, only I opened it up to the world. Instead of only passing it down to my families, I spoke to my readers through my writing, and that was my talk story.
You make an interesting point. You seem annoyed with your mother's talk story at points in your autobiography. I have a question about this one part of the story. Is it okay if I read it for viewers at home?
Sure.
Okay. So at the end of your book, you make a strong argument against your mother in a fight with her. On page 202, you say, "And I don't want to listen to any more of your stories. They have no logic. They scramble me up. You lie with stories. You won't tell me a story and then say, this is a true story, or this is just a story. I can't tell the difference. I don't even know what your real names are. I can't tell what's real and what you make up. Ha! You can't stop me from talking. You tried to cut off my tongue, but it didn't work." So, you make such a strong statement about not liking the talk story here because you don't know what's real and what your mother makes up. Why do you do it to your reader at times if you don't like it yourself?
Well, for me, so much of my identity is from my mother, and I wanted to keep her traditional ways of storytelling alive and through my story. That way I'm respecting my elders by keeping to tradition. I didn't mean to confuse my readers. I wanted to excite them. For me, it doesn't matter what genre my book is in the library or the bookstore. For me, it's just that my book is there and I have a voice and I can excite readers. As I said to my mother, she cannot silence me. But what I didn't realize when I said that was that she wasn't trying to silence me at all. She was just trying to give me a voice.
Who were you trying to break the silence against? Was it the Chinese culture that you talk about so much in the book and its oppressive views towards women? At one point you say that your father's friend said, feeding girls is like feeding cowbirds.
For me, the book was a way to find myself, a way to find my voice. So many Chinese women are silenced, like my aunt, and I wanted to give a voice to those who were silenced. It's definitely to give a voice to those who, like their feet, their mouths were also bound, and they couldn't run from the oppression, nor could they speak about it.
Going back to what you said before, about respecting your elders, you disobeyed them by telling your aunt's story. Aren't you contradicting yourself?
No, Barbara, I I see where you're coming from, but I didn't tell my aunt's story to disrespect my mother or my father. I was just trying to pay tribute and respect to my aunt, who was silenced for so long. I felt that it was my duty to share my aunt's story.
How do you feel about those who say you are fake Chinese?
Honestly, people are all entitled to their own opinions. However, I'm not fake Chinese. I'm American, like you're American. My mother is Chinese, but I am American. Many people argue that I'm fake Chinese because they believe that I didn't accurately portray the myths and stories in my book. Others are upset that I added my own stories into the myth. That's what America is. It's molding together of cultures and assimilating. And a story passed down from generation to generation is never going to stay the same forever. There will always be different versions depending on the area of the speaker. Just look at Cinderella. How many different versions do you have of that? And it's not like the Grimm brothers woke up out of the grave and started hunting down the people that changed the story. They just embraced it. I pay tribute to my ancestors in the book by saying that every Chinese girl grows up with these stories. It's not like I was copywriting it. I just paid tribute to them. Others argue that my text is too feminist and that not true Chinese. Well, those who say that have probably never been in a room with Chinese women when the doors closed. For generations who were silenced, I took a stance and showed how, due to the patriarchal culture that I came from, that is how I became so independent. I merely stood up for myself. How could you not when your culture literally killed baby girls because they thought that they were the weaker sex?
Those are very good points. Now, my last question is one that I'm personally struggling with. Your autobiography tells so much of your mother's life, and even your aunt's. I feel at times it is a biography of your mother and not your autobiography. How do you feel about that?
Barbara, I feel as though I need to tell my mother's story to be able to tell mine. She's so much a part of me, and she's the reason the way I am, who I am, and how I am. My story is nothing without hers. She is the foundation for mine. You can see in my book that when I'm looking at my mother's talk story that I struggle at times with what she is trying to tell me and how she's trying to tell me things. But that's truly where my story comes in, my grappling with her story to try and figure out my own identity.
Thank you so much for coming in today, Maxine, and answering all of my questions.
No, thank you, Barbara. It was lovely to be here.
That's all for tonight. Have a good night at home.